5. Why must only you take over our end-stage human crisis leadership? Because your focus, attention, and motivation to recover your own blood and marriage loved ones' full good lives will always be 1,000 times more loving, ethical, smart, and powerful than any of the millions of leaders totally distracted away from human love and care by profit, power, protocol, and orders and deals from their money fountain managers. Their motivation is almost solely to extend prosperous jobs continuously won only from voters propagandized by the 1% government business money bags determined to feast on giant chunks of our federal treasuries inflated by your compulsory taxes. You've never heard a 25-hour courtroom brief against private gifts to no longer public servants, so stay tuned. Your leaders take most of their orders from corrupt, inhuman institutions designed to preserve all politician jobs only by handing over, for every $1,000 gift, $1 million in tax money or regulatory menace, not safety, to succor the bribers always and you never. In America, this very sick, very deadly conspiracy, dissatisfied with merely most of your taxes, has borrowed and robbed $34 trillion in debt from your grandkids. The consequent hemorrhage of 40 cents of every tax dollar of debt interest you are forced to pay today is scheduled soon to bankrupt every entitlement program that you elected the jackals to preserve, not eat alive. So force your leaders to put trillions of war money into debt repayment and persuade state legislatures to ratify your constitutional amendment to prohibit one more penny borrowed by those thieves. Now, all that war and doomsday machinery that we know exactly how to outlaw is ever inflated and exploded by theft of your trillions to achieve merely grandiose, infantile power, riches, and conquest. The bribers' TV commercial money specifically brainwashes close to 100% of entire populations with war's noblest reasons. Racist, one true religion bigoted, nationalist murder of millions, mostly women and children non-combatants, for the capital crimes of being different than, inferior to, therefore evil, alongside the superior, righteous, sword-swinging bosses of us all. So your treaty has a tenet to deprogram 8 billion war cult stolen, sickened minds and hearts, which is worldwide classes required for over 5 and under 125, teaching love of diverse everybody, respect, not bigotry, and every world problem only fixed together. All learned during 195 nation live video audio conversations. In delightful contrast to 10,000 years of forced conscription, all humanity will every day be too busy understanding, loving, and saving all to ever hate and kill again. But since 1 billion would remain ever tempted to pick up weapons laying around everywhere if they're still being bought and sold with our damn money, most of our remaining ass-kicking will be crushing insane, stupid arguments against disarmament that our everyday collaboration never stops working hard for. Finally, we private citizens should agree not to buy political ads on TV for or against war or peace political candidates whose publicity must only be equally publicly funded by law. Only you and your world citizen allies can stop Gaza genocide. Israel has announced full intention to sustain its war, not on Hamas so much as the mass of Gaza innocents above, through 2024. They'll keep holding IDF casualties to a minimum by mostly pounding tunnels with 2,000-pound bombs through 1 billion tons of apartment buildings above. Spokesmen express regret for the necessary killing and wounding of the soon-to-exceed 100,000 civilian casualties, not to mention smashing the entire urban 2.3 million homeland back to the Stone Age. Another 100,000 are fixing to die of thirst, hunger, and disease. This January of 2024, South Africa and other appealing nations attempted to stop this deliberate innocence hell on earth with their war crimes lawsuit pressed through the International Court of Justice, a United Nations entity. At first glance, a victory of sorts came back quickly. But let's take a closer look. The ICJ ordered Israel to use all possible means to protect civilians and facilitate vastly increased aid to a population months deep into zero inside sources of water, food, medical care, or any other life support either. Of course, all along, Israel has PR claimed aid intake maximal, while quietly, deliberately allowing in less than 15% of escalating life support need. Then spokesmen daily assure the world of painstaking efforts to spare civilians, while we watch their own proudly released TV videos of thousands of blockbuster bombs continuing to obliterate square miles of apartment buildings, slaughtering 1,400 women and children each and every week for months. Ever since Hitler, warriors who incessantly lie are believed by billions. Brilliant PR. The UN court declined to grant the complainants' ceasefire demand, obviously making their aid sufficiency and civilian protection orders world-understood jokes. All know that an ICJ ceasefire ruling must pass muster with the Security Council for enforcement. So the 2,000-pound American bomb supplier and single veto lord of the all-powerful Security Council will unilaterally continue to shoot down 98% world-demanded ceasefire, chuckling at repeated General Assembly verdicts against Palestinian Holocaust. Typically around 190 of 195 nations screaming for peace. Now you get why I demand that you replace world government essentially run by a handful of nuclear and blockbuster TNT bomb salesmen with your own Save Your World law. The 2,000-pound bomb industry's story will never be told if their PR holds sway. The conventional explosive behemoth is indeed ideal for concentrated military targets. For 85 years, however, presidents and generals have waged total war upon civilians with similar mega explosives, preferring to murder several hundreds of millions of innocents who couldn't shoot back. But desperate survivors might up pressure on enemy governments to surrender. Actually, hundreds of such bestial attacks went on for decades without securing victory. But the bomb sellers behind the conspiracy made trillions, their entire purpose. Superpower wars on Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, Ukraine, and Gaza were all lost or destined to because bombed homelands always fight back 50 years, just as you would if foreign bombers blew your children to bloody shreds in their bedrooms. Again, Death Incorporated rules the world with civilian slaughter that never ends, except for imminent doomsday, mostly just for weapon resupply orders by the decade and century. Their profits buy bribery that forces 80% of legislators to vote them giant arms contracts from most national congresses on earth. Exactly why you're going to end private campaign finance. Only you can stop super bombers like Russia, America, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and North Korea with your world peace revolution that will take at least a couple of decades to drag these totally corrupted superpowers kicking and screaming to heel. We've discussed your emergency restraint, not incitement, of Alexander Putin's conventional defeat in Ukraine exploding to nuclear winter. Now let's rescue today's worst besieged, Gaza. As I've related, the UN is only designed to perpetuate single, scorched earth superpower military dictator wars. Today's eternal Mideast war verdict revealed the International Court of Injustice to be the Insecurity Council's one veto puppy dog. Now you must hurry to organize 180 nations of family defenders to demand that their governments all cut off trade, communication, banking, and transportation with America, Israel, Iran, Yemen, and Hamas until they cease all attacks on civilians in ships, Gaza, West Bank, and Israel. While the IDF has good reason to attempt elimination of Hamas in tunnels with foot patrols, who thinks the hostages would not mostly die? Our plan, in fact begged for by most of Israel's traumatized citizens too, is to trade living hostages for Hamas exile to faraway nations pledged to keep them permanently. All must drop the Netanyahu scheme for Gaza 100-year foreign military dictatorship. The same 20 to 220 war hell that our last century's bomb companies tricked humanity into, with 80% of national leaders in their employ, of course. Establish the independent nation of Palestine, subject to a major international rule. No invasion force rockets or other distance attack capacity allowed, including thousands of assault weapons. Hezbollah's giant artillery and mass assault capacity likewise must be reduced to a reasonable border defense of Lebanon against an equally down to Israel defense force protection. No longer keeping bombs, bombers, and missiles to waste foreign nations 20 times their size. Speaking of border defenses that keep the peace crazies like me laud, thunderous IDF foreign bombing champions totally abandoned even the tiniest soldier patrols of Israel's border with the enclave ruled by kill every Jew from the river to the sea terrorists that Commander-in-Chief Netanyahu authorized billions in funding to. For a full year, Hamas planned and trained to suddenly, savagely attack thousands in close-by Jewish kibbutzes, all reported by Netanyahu's intelligence agents to his government and military, who decided that the punks were only daydreaming. Then went back to their own 100 times bigger, real as a heart attack slaughter plans. Hence the killer's October 7th waltz into Israel untouched on hang gliders, motorbikes, and pickup trucks. 1,200 dead, 250 kidnapped before the first Jewish soldier finally arrived from afar. Ridiculous, right? Wrong. This invited horror sprung another 50-year world armed feud precisely scripted by the exact commercial, industrial, political, military complex that Eisenhower warned about while weaponeers stole 80% of the U.S. Treasury for a decade. All my chapters yammer like a broken record. 10,000 years of war ensured by weapons commerce, corruption, and tax theft for arms sales, all perpetrated and perpetuated to commit 1 billion murders of the poisonous player's own citizens. Not any liar's national defense. Attacking every earthling possible until early 2100s doomsday, when they'll finally get us all. Well, somebody, admittedly 50 years too damn last second, has something to say about that. Who dat? Me? Big deal. So what? To save our world, you and your billion closest friends, in fewer years than you have fingers, are gonna have to kick the death and all other businesses the hell out of your tax treasuries and negotiate peace law with every nation's citizens. Force it on thieving leaders until you vote them out fast for family lovers, and drive towards completion and ratification our swords into plowshares treaty to fill lakes, water forests, and scrub out stratosphere CO2 to bring back our rains of life for good. Right now, evil finishes us all because none of your absolutely wonderful caring and actions to help targets the big, stupid world tyrants dooming their own children and future. Every word of these speeches is about the end of your family if you ignore and abandon our terminal world, thus making your own loved ones' defense and survival impossible. We Americans and Europeans, the prosperous half of us, appreciate our easing of inflation and don't run short on food and water just today. So no worries, right? Let South and Central America, South Asia, India, Pakistan, the Middle East, and especially Africa go to hell. When Third World and the Southern Hemisphere's water supply, agriculture, economies, drug cartels, and wars all rush a giant fraction of humanity from sick to dying, won't our first world West float forever on our islands of plenty? Are you kidding? We're independent of half-world death? And Europe's, China's, and North America's lakes, rivers, forests, and crops are dying from 25,000 miles around drought too. Our booming economies might briefly outlast half-world terminal poverty, but definitely won't survive our extremely fast-appearing, cracked earth and river bottoms. What are you? 90% water. When your water faucet spits dust, already happening all over the world, without some nearby, far luckier community's unlikely surplus shipment, then dust you become. My other 25-hour argument is find more water yesterday. Let's talk COVID. Why has the virus killed nearly 7 million and now remains chronic, also causing many life-debilitating cases of truly chronic long COVID? Certainly many nations remain too poor and crowded to isolate against outbreak peaks, and others allowed 10 times world average deaths with stupid leaders discouraging masks and encouraging gatherings at contagion height. But most of the death toll, past, present, and future, was and will be caused by failure to vaccinate. Governments and their oblivious citizens everywhere roll over for a few big pharma dogs keeping patents, manufacture, and distribution away from most of humanity. Their billions in campaign bribes, donations, are paid to leaders everywhere to shut up about their vaccine monopoly. 3 companies' inability to protect 8 billion, and organized price-gouging conspiracies. For this and certainly the fast-coming new pandemics, your treaty must fund 150 worldwide drug companies to keep poking 8 billion arms every year, which would at least almost wipe out every pandemic as fast as childhood diseases were beautifully zapped by vaccines until idiots believing a non-existent autism side effect revolted, dragging vaccination rates far down, inviting several bad diseases right back. Let's teach all governments and people to just give and get the 1-second pokes capable of flat retiring every disease that we can vanquish just by continuing to needle 90%. Goes in our treaty, of course. Push it unless you're content with world recession as severe as each mistreated pandemic. Besides the 1% death rate, potentially tens of millions, 2/3 shrug off COVID like light flu. But up to 1/3 suffer seriously with years of long COVID. Millions die of flu, virtually all unvaccinated, of course. Only your treaty pokes 8 billion with both vaccines each fall, solving every potential 500 million killer pandemic 6 months into its spread, because vaccine preparation could surely get that fast, good, and worldwide. Just don't forget to go viral with the simple class to prove virus's total holocaust without utterly safe vaccines, so that unvaccinated chumps will drop from the current 85% to 5%. Pay us to get the shots, then give us insurance discounts. Stupid suffering and early death are not fate or God's will, just inflicted by ignorance, corporate public corruption, malice, and heartless overarmed aggressors. God orders us to learn, then love, care for, and protect each other's world, not just family, with our wisdom and talent, not His inconsistent magic that He gave us to always use. So are you going to help 8 billion to snatch their lives from bad actors' jaws of death out of sweet, saintly altruism? Heck no. You're mostly out to save your own sweet ass and family. Totally impossible without finagling the entire world's help to ditch the rockets and bombs and find the water and food everyone needs to survive. You smarty pants.